You're listening to the J Report Talk Radio on PTN Network.
What's up, everyone? Back at you again, universityofhermes.com with another book review. And this time it's How to Make a Negro Christian. This should be interesting. A reprinting of the religious instruction of the Negroes and other works by Dr. Reverend Charles Colcock Jones. That's a long name. Alright, let's jump right into it. Let's see. I want to get into the interesting stuff. Adidas Wilson goes even more in depth. We must keep in mind that the enslaved Africans were not Christians when they were brought to the New World. They were predominantly practitioners of their indigenous African religions and behaved in accord with indigenous African code of ethics. Therefore, the Christian religion, along with its ideological doctrines, were taught to and imposed on enslaved Africans by their white masters. Obviously, the masters taught the slaves Christianity for their own conscious and unconscious self-serving reasons. The theology they passed on to their slaves were necessarily biased in order to serve and justify their dominance. Blacks do not relate to, pray to, and serve Jesus Christ excuse me, in the same way for the same reasons. Whites do, even though it appears they do. Christianity as a central cultural institution has not empowered the black community in the same way it has empowered the white community, or as it has the other alien Christian communities, or any ways other communities are empowered by their own religious institutions. As a matter of fact, Christianity as it practiced in the African American community has probably done as much to disempower that community than to empower it. That sounds about right. Christianity to the slaves by their masters or by the dominant whites served to rationalize and justify the status quo of white mastery and black slavery. White dominance and black subordination, white command and black obedience. This ambivalent, I might have said that wrong, but oh well, function of Christianity as taught to African slaves remains embedded in the church theology of the contemporary black church. This theology and the ethics derive from its functions to sustain white domination, domination by other groups, and black subordination by means of inducing blacks to believe in and follow what appears to be divine. Where was I at? For whites, Christianity empowers, justifies their sense of moral superiority, justifies and dictates their dominance of non-whites, provides material enrichment, provides material comforts, reduces material suffering, is self-affirming, produces tangible and desirable results in the world as well as the world to come, promotes the worship of a God whose image bears their likeness, provides a rationale for their racial self-centeredness, selfishness, and exclusively by confining the practice of brotherly love and equality, self-sacrifice, and the like within the borders of the white race. For blacks, Christianity disempowers, induces a sense of moral inferiority, preaches submission, subordination, and obedience, is associated with material deprivation, sacrifices material discomfort and suffering, is self-negating, self-effacing, produces relatively few tangibles and desirable results in this world, while emphasizing pie in the sky, otherworldly rewards, promotes the worship of a god that wears a non-African face and bears the facial image of their own white dominators and enemies, leading them to consciously worship white people. To think of them as more godlike than themselves, to perceive them as divinely ordained to rule over themselves, to associate whiteness of skin with all that is good and blackness of skin with all that is bad, provides a rationale for racial self-denial, selflessness, inclusiveness, etc., by expanding the practice of brotherly love and equality. They ain't teaching you this in church. And self-sacrifice, in light to all beyond the borders of the African race. Christian theology and ethics, especially in the form of good-evil, good-bad precepts and behavior, constitutes the principal form of white. Domination of blacks, the acceptance by Africans of white valuations and definitions of good versus evil, good versus bad attitudes and behaviors. This is deep, too deep for some of y'all. Our accurate history shows that Christianity only intruded in our spiritual lives in mass numbers around 1900 AD, or roughly for about 106 years. If this writer may be blunt, knowledge of our real spiritual historical chronology in this dungeon called America is grossly inept. Wow. Let's go look at something else. Let's see. The life of Reverend Dr. Charles Colcock Jones. Damn, he was a white dude. Did I give the book away? While characters of some influential works have been proven to possibly be fictional, I have gone through great lengths to make sure Dr. Jones actually lived. Below is information regarding his actual life, family lineage, the sources they come from, and then we will move into the reprinting in its entirety of the religious instruction of Negro and the sermon. Woo! This is deep, baby. This is deep. How to make a Negro Christian. This the blueprint right here. This the blueprint. I bet them preachers ain't gonna preach this shit. Jones Charles Colcock, clergyman, born in Liberty County. He was a professor of a church history, this and that. Suggestions on the instruction of Negroes in the South. In the early decades of the 19th century, Christianity had made little or no inroads among blacks for fear that they might take literally such narratives as the Exodus. Pay attention. They didn't teach this at first because they was fearing that the slaves might do the Exodus on their ass, might just leave. But as the crisis of fear spread across the South, suddenly rather impressive efforts were made to address the needs of the souls of black folk. These were well-organized evangelistic endeavors, particularly in those areas with large plantations. Congregations stepped up their appeals and refined their approaches to African Americans. Preachers and planters alike urged them to fill the galleries and special seating that was set aside for these honored guests. Some owners were even motivated to build praise houses on their land and recruited black preachers to proclaim the Lord's name, as long, of course, as a white foreman was present to monitor things so they did not get out of hand. Large slaveholders like the Reverend Charles Colcock Jones, he was a slave owner that wrote the blueprint. He wrote this shit. But you ain't listening. Large slaveholders like the Reverend Charles Colcock Jones worked to compromise a Christian primer for slaves to instill teachings that were designed as a response to the portents of revolution and to serve as a preventive measure to any insurrection. Think about it. Still going on today. Wow. I love this book. So much knowledge out here and people don't even read. You can read now, you're not slaves, at least physically. But I only do book reviews. I don't preach to anybody. I don't talk to you about, I don't care what religion you are. You can believe in that rock outside or that turtle. You know, I just do book reviews. That's all. Wow. This is a deep book. A very deep book.
You're listening to the J Report Talk Radio on PTN Network.